If you have anybody locked up in any of these systems here in New York, I'm going to tell you how to get them out. It's the easiest way, okay? They all operate at the local and state level under this hometown rules, okay? So they're all dictated not by law, but by a board of supervisors who make these decisions, okay? And so I'll use Livingston County, New York as an example, because you have to get inside the minds of the freaks after years upon years upon years of watching all this stuff go on without any real rhyme or reason measured up against the law, okay? They are all dictated by a board of supervisors. They're not dictated by law. As a matter of fact, they do not follow law, okay? If the federal government mandates them to do something for the safety and the well-being of all people combined, they do not do that, okay? They don't follow any mandated laws by the federal government, okay? Here's a good example. In the early 2000s, I want to say it started in maybe the year 2000, the federal government mandated that all public water systems that manage dwellings over 10,000 dwellings, they had to come up to par with these standards set by the federal government for the management of public water. They gave an additional time period, I think it was like 3 years. So, for safety timeline purposes, let's just say they gave them until the year 2004 to come up to par and at standard with what the federal government dictated they must do. It wasn't an option, they had to do it, okay? So the additional time was given to those communities that serviced less than 10,000 dwellings on a public water system. They didn't do it. The federal government even funded all of this activity and they still didn't do it, okay? Instead, they used all that funding to build brand new schools. All these multi-million-dollar schools, or they converted their existing school into multi-million, billion-dollar schools with money that was earmarked and laid out by the federal government to ensure that the water system infrastructure was solidly in place and that they were providing regular and ongoing testing and servicing of those systems. They never did it. They built increased public schools. The cost of public schools, that's what they use that money for. Then they increased property taxes. New York State is one of the heaviest burdened property tax states you will ever find in the continental United States, okay? Then using the increase on the public burden of property taxes, primarily school taxes, they increased all their salaries. So now all these teachers make 6 figures, okay, with like loaded benefits. Then, as the need arose to make corrections to public water systems, they borrowed money and continued to increase property taxes to pay for the borrowed money to service the water systems that the federal government already not only mandated that they put in place and provided ongoing funding for the testing and maintenance of, but they just are doing patchwork. So that's why we have health issues here in the United States, because nobody oversees federal dollars coming into communities. Nobody does. And so if you have somebody, I'll give you the nut in a nutshell version of how easy it is to get people out of jail and out of these prisons here in New York, okay? They all operate Board of Supervisors, not by law. If they were operating by law, none of this shit would ever happen, okay? And if they were operating by law, not only would none of this shit ever happen, but there would be a body of government that steps down to periodically check that the monies that were given to these communities were actually used for the purposes intended. It does not happen here in the United States. These little board of directors and every board of directors, board of supervisors, whatever, the board, they all operate from a standpoint of hometown rules, and they create those rules. So those are the people they will give preferential treatment to in any situation, including that of the court of law, based on whatever they come up with. So in Livingston County, they weigh heavily on people that are born and raised in Livingston County. It's a two-pronged criteria. You must be born, you must be raised, and hey, if you're living there after you were born and raised there, you know, you're now in the community for good, you receive automatically preferential treatment. It's called prejudiced in any court of law in Livingston County. You will not receive any justice there, okay? So if you have somebody that is in prison, let's say you have somebody in jail in Livingston County. They are of Asian descent. They were not born in Livingston County, okay? The easiest thing for you to do is use their hometown rules. Tap on China or one of those Asian countries on the knowledge that I'm passing to you and have them come here and step in on that. Because that trumps Livingston County's hometown rules. If there's anyone in these jails, especially Livingston County, I so would love to see somebody step in on that shit. From Russia, you know, you got somebody in any of these jails that are here on visas and you're not reporting that shit back to the country that they came from, that's an automatic violation of international law. Because I would love for somebody to just step in on Livingston County and fucking bust them down to shit for after all the shit they did to me and my kids and my dogs. I'd really love it. So that's the easiest way. You start with, I don't care who wants to start it all off. You can do, somebody can say, yeah, we'd like to know how many people you have in your prisons that came over here on work visas, travel visas, or education, you know, school visas. How many do you have that came in that were never reported back to those home countries? Who can, by the way, assign an international attorney on their behalf based on the quantity? But I would love it if somebody would do that. It's the easiest way to break these people down and put them back in their place, especially if we're dealing with China and Russia. Get somebody in here on an international front, because that is the criteria when we're talking visas, okay? They must report that activity back and provide them with a status on those individuals. But that's the best way. You got somebody locked up that's not from another country, especially in Livingston County, you find yourself an attorney that wants to fight on those hometown rules out there on your behalf, and you focus right in on prejudice behavior, and that's their prejudice. They are extremely prejudiced. Putting color aside, the three things that keep their people out of the system and out of any type of negative limelight. If they were born and raised and are still living in Livingston County, those people are golden. It doesn't matter what they do, how many laws they break, or whatever the fuck goes on with them. They will never feel the ramifications of any type of law, and that's how you get around it. You go against them on their hometown rules. I would so love it if anybody out there would make the request of the United States for all jails and prisons to find out who's in there on visas, work visas, school visas, travel visas, and why, and raise the question, so why was this not reported back to us, and what is their current status? What is their health status here in the United States? Oh, I would so love this. I would love it if somebody did this. Please, somebody take this and run with this.